Insured Nomads proudly supports the new Nomad podcast. Insured Nomads for the evolution of insurance, for the revolution of travel. For all your travel, medical, and support needs, please visit our website at insurednomads.com. We support our location-independent community worldwide.
Welcome to the new Nomad podcast, hosted by Alan and Andrew of Insured Nomads. Join us as Alan and Andrew interview and explore the community of people and ideas that embody the nomadic spirit. Tune in to incredible discussions with thought leaders each week that will help you take full advantage of the cross-border remote work lifestyle. Now here are your hosts.
Chris Cerra is going to join us from RemoteBase today. And really, it's going to be a great conversation. You know, we have a lot of people that ask us, Andrew, I want to go for a month, 2 months, 3 months. We hear more and more about slow travel, you know, really getting into the culture. A lot of our remote workers, certainly that's an important item out there. And people are looking for the tools to make the good decisions, to find the right places, to find the right deals, to find the community that they need. And I know you've traveled to many different locations, big fan of slow travel, although a lot of our business trips, you feel like it's almost too fast. What's the optimal kind of slow travel experience for you, Andrew?
I believe that destinations, if possible, should be no less than 3 weeks for my take, and preferably longer. But that does depends on your location where you're staying. You may get to an Airbnb and determine, I got to get out of this place. Help. But I think we're going to dive into that today to figure out the best places and how to get the inside scoop on that.
Well, it was interesting. Andrew and I had a conversation on this podcast with a person who is doing 12 places, 1 month each, of course, over the year. And then of all the places that went great. And then there was one that like, this is just not working for me. Time to go. But that was even after 2 weeks, which I think is a deep enough investment in time to know if it's not working out or not. But it's a big world out there. So let's bring Chris into the conversation because Chris, you know, what you're offering and maybe a little bit of a background on how you decided to build RemoteBase and also really accommodations for people that are looking for the best long-term stay. Would love to hear your story, but also the story of how RemoteBase is something that you felt is important for us. And certainly we do by having you here on this podcast.
Yeah, it's really good to be here. Thanks for welcoming me. The long stay, slow travel, digital slow-mad approach to it is, I think, an extension of what started out as the digital nomad, kind of typical, almost like backpacking with a laptop. And that's a lot of fun. And I think that was probably something that a lot of people did when they had to really squeeze it in or kind of do it in secret or do it when it wasn't as easy. And, have like 3 day, 4 day stints in locations or maybe 1 week stints in locations. But living out of a suitcase is not fun, or living out of a backpack is not as fun as really being able to experience a place. So, Andrew's just talked about 3 weeks being like the minimum in his mind. And that's certainly something that I'd have to agree with. I think we tend to stay now for 1 to 2 months, really, where we can, visa dependent. That whole thing is something that started a long time ago for me. I think it's a slippery slope, right? It starts with working remotely, and that might be just domestically. Maybe you venture to the local coffee shops, and then that's what I was doing like five or so years ago. And then it kind of branched out into maybe we extend some weekend breaks, and we do a city break somewhere, and we just extend it and work for a week in that location. And once the penny drops in that scenario, it's easy to kind of take that and extend it out. And before you know it, you've done your first 1 month trip to a destination. And really good things happen when you do that, because I think there's a big financial saving. I run the RemoteBase newsletter, and that's really all about helping people just unlock the world and kind of save them time, save them money, save them stress. The big way that we do that is we help them save money on accommodation. So we source all of the best accommodation deals for long stay. And there's crazy deals out there, 50, 60, 70, 80% off when you book for 1 month or more. And yeah, so you kind of, once you go over the 28 night mark in the booking platforms, you can unlock some crazy discounts. And that's a big one, because I think a lot of people think that going away for so long has a bigger financial impact than it really does. In a lot of cases, it's actually cheaper than kind of staying put and having all of the other commitments, and not necessarily just the commitment of a place to stay, but all of the things that come with that, right? Like when you're based somewhere, you kind of end up getting a vehicle, or all of the other things that entail just having a long-term base somewhere. But there's other kind of cultural and like more immersive things that are unlocked. Like when you go to a coffee shop on the 15th day, the staff are kind of like, why you've been here for more than 2 weeks? Like you're not a tourist. That's one of my favorite things, I think, kind of being able to get a little bit closer to the people who are in a place, because you can read a million blogs about the best X or the best Y in almost any destination, right? It just takes a quick Google, and there's thousands of results. But yeah, one of the best things to do is just talk to the barista. Ask the guy in the coffee shop, like, hey, where do I get good, whatever it is that you're into, good noodles or good live music, they're the people who are going to unlock the location for you, I think. So yeah, there's two big things there that like really change the way that you experience a place when you can go long term. And it has to start with remote work, but pretty soon you get into long stay discounts, and it is a game changer.
Well, I mean, you really get into the culture, the vibe, the pace when you're there, and and help us to our audience. A lot of people are like, well, how can I do this? How do I make it monetarily work? I mean, you've already mentioned that obviously the costs are on a per day basis or better when you're long-term stay, but I would also think that you'd have deeper insights that you can share with others that give you better revenue making opportunities if you've been somewhere for a period of time. Maybe some of the things that you've seen that people say to you, hey, I can't do this. And you say, yeah, well, actually you can. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the monetary side that help people stay as they move along.
I think that people say a lot, which is like, this place I'd love to go here, but like it's inaccessible. And it's maybe because they don't have a vehicle, or they would have to, like, it's a place that's more rural and they can't necessarily access. There's not an airport that's within 2-3 hours. So it becomes, we have to rent a car, or if we're there for a long time, then how do we move around once we do get there? And actually, again, it's that equation of like, well, it might the per night rate might be really high, but if you book it out for a couple of months, there's enough money left over for you to rent a scooter and go driving around the hills of Tuscany, or to rent a car and do whatever it is that you want to do around an island, if that's where you are. There seems to be a very high density of kind of digital nomads and traveling remote workers in the cities, and that's because they're accessible and they're fun because they're away from, in inverted commas, home. But that new place is only fun for so long. And I think slowly, the way that remote work has evolved, people have seemed to want to come away from cities. And so then it becomes about how they can balance staying in a place that is kind of more disconnected and maybe greener and just more natural, but also having the kind of accessibility aspect and freedom of movement that people still kind of need. That's still a big need.
Chris, so there's been a lot of grief and commotion online in the last year and a half or so, how that Airbnb rates have just gone up. Owners are charging way too much because of so many more people being free to work wherever they choose and going off for a week to 2 weeks at locations. And of course, people starting competing sites and booking platforms for houses, etc. I believe that this is a market that's going to grow ever more, with people coming alongside Airbnb saying ours is better. Do you believe that Airbnb still is the future of this space, and they'll put in some pricing controls? Or, I guess price is one of the things you keep your thumb on. So can you speak into those topics I just brought up? Because it's a real mess for some, because they look at it saying, oh, I thought this was going to be less. But I go there and it's more expensive than a hotel, and hotel has, room service, etc.
Yeah, breakfast. Yeah, I can definitely talk about this. There's a number of aspects that I think are worth covering. Let's start with kind of the worldwide spread. I think that there is, like, this conundrum, it like manifests in different ways in different places. So for example, in the US or in North America, it's crazy because the taxes are just insane. They're insanely high on short-term rentals. And so that means that even with discounts, even with what what looks like quite a kind of severe discount, 50-60% off, you actually might only end up with like a 40% discount or a 30% discount because the taxes are so heavy. Obviously, certain states are more punishing than others, but yeah, it can be really rough. And I think a lot of the bad press, or a lot of the press that kind of hammers Airbnb for fees, actually still looks at it on a short-term rental basis, which they should, because that's largely what it is. And so I think that aspect of it is probably correct. It's still I still think, even when you kind of crunch the numbers, still seeing a kind of 30% discount or a 40% discount is still quite good for a long stay. As we move like across, if we move east, you go to Europe. There it manifests slightly different because there are cities now that are, well, not even now, for a long time, there are some cities that have put really tight restrictions on short-term rentals. There's over-tourism concerns, there's housing concerns, and those are valid too, and they're being dealt with that way. Seems to be less severe in terms of taxes there. A more kind of liberal approach, I think, to the way that fees are applied. So for hosts, Airbnb fees can be paid by the host or they can be paid by the customer. And I think there's more hosts in Europe that are willing to kind of stomach the fees at their end as part of their, that's their way of keeping themselves competitive. As opposed to, in the US, it's very much kind of like the customer takes the cost, or maybe, I'm not even sure, but perhaps the taxes are actually forced upon the guests. And then as we move even further east, as you move into kind of Africa, Asia, those are countries where if you're coming from a Western country, or if you earn in Western currencies, then the fees are almost negligible. Even if the fees are applied, they're almost negligible just because of the way that the global economy works. So the whole thing is something that is, I see it evolving differently in different places. In terms of competitors and like people that are coming through and challenging Airbnb, I think that you're right. It's kind of ripe for disruption. There's probably lots of changes that we're going to see over the next few years. There are a few kind of niches that people are going into. Like some people want to develop like Airbnb where you pay with NFTs, or Airbnb where you pay with basically, all down the crypto route. Other people are like, no, co-living is what it's about and we should have community. And there's like, with that, I think no matter what happens, you're going to pay. Like people have to pay for accommodation, and it's just going to be about what you pay for. So if you want to have like a private space where there's nobody else around and you can focus on your work, you probably are looking for an Airbnb or a hotel room. And if we're saying that there's parity in price there, then that's going to be what the price is. If you are somebody who wants community and wants to be surrounded by people with similar interests or similar kind of professional pursuits, then the people that are developing these communities, they're not going to give you that for free. They're just going to charge probably somewhere in the same region because, that's your alternative. They'll charge for that. And it's just going to be about kind of the perceived value that people have from the different options that are available. That being said, I think there is something to say around the long-term thing, which is there will always be deals. There will always be deals to be had. And whether that is on Airbnb or off Airbnb, like it's no secret with RemoteBase, we are heavily focused on Airbnb. People actually ask all the time, like, is this how we monetize? Are we taking another cut out of that pie and essentially kind of inflating things even further? Well, the answer is no. Like we never take commissions for Airbnb bookings. The newsletter is completely free. So, if you sign up to that, it's like, it's free monetarily, and it's also kind of free data-wise. Like I don't even take first names at the email sign-up page. Yeah. It's more about just kind of genuinely just kind of helping people go out and pursue this lifestyle if they want to. So there's no monetization there on the Airbnb side. Yeah, I think there will always be discounts available on Airbnb. If people aren't looking at Airbnb, I'm seeing all of this that you're describing around the evolution, and you're right, we keep our finger very much on the pulse, not just with pricing, but people's operating models, like literally how they're operating. Like, do they own the property, or are they just kind of borrowing it and selling it for a higher price? Yeah, we try to keep our finger on everything, and where there are deals that look good, those will kind of slowly creep their way into the newsletter and the remote-based space.
So Chris, you mentioned earlier about the trend away from the cities. Is that also perhaps a cost element of it too? Because I would think that if I was at a kind of a more rural location, I might be able to get a better deal. Or are there particular, if somebody's really looking at the finances of it, is there a particular region of the world that you see that there are better deals and more opportunity to save in your experience?
That is a really hard question, and I think this is why it's hard. I don't think that there's like a definitive answer to this, because like the whole point of, if you live this lifestyle already, or if you're pursuing this lifestyle, the chances are you've chosen it, or you're kind of investigating it because of what you want, right? Like if you're somebody who likes the cities, you're not going to go and live in the country because it's cheaper. Like you need to find a way to make the city more affordable for you, and vice versa, right? If you're somebody who really likes the rural space, then don't hole yourself up in a box surrounded by people in the city because it's a little bit cheaper. So I think there's what you want is probably accessible somewhere in the world, probably for the price that for your budget, you can probably make it accessible. I think that where price sensitivity comes into play, it means for a lot of people, it means moving out of kind of Western countries, or moving away from the US and Europe and into like Asia or into South America, if time zones are a concern, because that's another concern that people have, or just distance, right? Just like being close enough to family, like in an emergency, maybe you want to get back and you want to get back quickly and cost effectively. So yeah, I think Asia has countryside and it has cities, just like a lot. There are probably a few countries out there that only have one or the other, but for the most part, in terms of continent or region, you can find what you're looking for. I don't want to encourage people to kind of kill their desires for the sake of the price. Like I think it's out there, guys. Like you can go and find it. You can go and find what you want, and we'll help you get it in budget.
Well, and that's the thing I think is great about RemoteBase is you also can wait. I mean, like for instance, instead of staying in London, which we know is expensive, maybe I'll stay in Sarajevo. I mean, I'm just throwing that out there as an example. And I'm sure you would help curate those different choices too with the discounts that you find. Are there places right now that are hot in your mind?
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of in Europe in inverted commas, like Turkey's been really big recently. I think their currency went quite weak, and again, because of pricing and cost of living, people kind of saw that as an opportunity to go somewhere where the sun shines and it's light on the pocket. Yeah, that's a big one. Similarly, like Albania, we're basically talking about Greek weather, but a fraction of the price. Brazil is on a very good trajectory right now. So the guys who did the Start of Madeira project with the Nomad village there, they're doing another Nomad village now in Brazil. So yeah, there's a few different places. I think Asia has some kind of a few different almost like nomad rites of passage. Like, have you really done it until you've been to these places? So that, there's places like Bali, which because of the kind of not status, but because of what it stands for in the nomad community, I think prices there have gone up. And kind of in Thailand, there's Chiang Mai, where I'll be heading later this year. So yeah, there are some places that are just kind of on the map and probably aren't going anywhere. And then there's these new developing places. And I think that some of the new places are really exciting. Somebody also said that India is going to be big. And I think that's a really interesting kind of proposition. One where, lots and lots of development happening in terms of like infrastructure all the time. So yeah, and it's a big place, right? You can probably go there and spend a lot of time there and see a lot, and it take you the best part of a year, and you still would probably come away feeling like you hadn't touched it. So if you're into this for the kind of the travel aspect and the exciting, like adventurous side of discovering new places, which I think a lot of people are, if you're in that digital nomad, traveling remote worker mindset, I think a lot of that's fueled by that buzz that you get when you arrive somewhere new for the first time and have to orient yourself. I think that would be a fantastic place to go and do that.
I'm totally with you, and have some places that I'd like to explore with, where the Portuguese colonized India and things like that. There's some really interesting aspects of India and other places that you reference. But this is one of those times where I love to hear an overlooked place that you think people, or an experience that you think our listeners should know about.
Yeah, okay. This is like every traveler's... Yeah, it's one of those questions that I think every traveler gets asked, and it's kind of like apples and oranges. You've had people on the podcast before talk about like kind of maybe exotic or off the beaten path places. Like, I think you had like Mark Phillips talk about Silk Road. You had Ali Green basically say, just, find what you like wherever you are. And I think that for me, I don't know where I am on that spectrum, right? In terms of go long, go exotic, or just go local and kind of be where you are. One of my favorite places was Hawaii. And this is probably going to spike a lot of people's, like, going to spike a reaction out of a lot of people. The reason that was one of my favorite places was because I kind of happened upon it. I wasn't supposed to be going there. So I went to the island of Kauai, which is like the most westerly island. I think there's another one which is like private, so it's not really considered the territory of any country or something. It's like you can't really go to it. So it was as far west as I could possibly go. And it's also a less kind of developed island. People call it the Garden Island. It's like, I think a ridiculous percentage of it is basically undeveloped, like 78% or something. And it's got there's just little facts about it, that little tidbits that are really beautiful, like, Jurassic Park, where it was kind of filmed there. They've got this stunning coastline. There are parts of it that look like desert and parts of it that look like jungle. It's just spectacular. But the thing that drew, like, maybe, if you're from the US, maybe it doesn't feel like it's that big of a deal, because you're kind of like, you're not really going anywhere away from home, potentially. This is what I kind of make up when I think about this. But for me, it was a place that I never ever thought I would visit. And for a lot of people, it's a place that is like a once in a lifetime. The goal of my life is to go and visit this place. And I managed to do it. And I spent 3 weeks there, and I had an amazing time. And if I wanted to, I could go back, and, my lifestyle allows me to do that. I think it's amazing. But yeah, there's other places. I think another thing about Hawaii is that it's an expensive place. So people think like, oh, don't tell me to go there, that's unattainable. Well, it is attainable. I promise you it is. And yeah, I think the only other thing that I would add there, the kind of non-destination focused answer to that question, is don't focus the travel on like getting to a certain place. Just go and just be. And probably like the one thing that I tell people all the time is like, no matter where you are or no matter where you go, the best advice that you can have, I think, and kind of practice, the best thing you can practice as somebody who travels is to just never make any assumptions, because you can go somewhere and meet people and talk to people, do things, see things. And a lot of your perception or a lot of your experience is kind of grounded in some assumptions that exist, either before you get there or, they form as you're experiencing. And actually a good thing to do is try and shake those, or even just check them, right? Just acknowledge that they're there and see what happens after that, because you might find that actually you have a very different experience. And yeah, you could go to Zanzibar and have just as good an experience as I did in Hawaii. I think it's totally dependent on who you are and where you're coming from.
Well, Chris, you're hitting a nerve in the sense that I just spent a couple weeks in Hawaii, and I agree with you. And we took somebody out there that was their 50th state. And there are those of us who like to collect countries, but it's also a great 50th state. Usually it's Alaska or Hawaii that are the last two that are out there. And the thing about Hawaii too is, once again, I stayed at an Airbnb, which actually was quite affordable. I know it was on the expensive side relative to the rest of the world, but it is quite affordable. And for those of you who've gone to Hawaii or not, you can fly Hawaiian Airlines island to island. Like, you can literally get on a flight 7 a.m. in the morning, be off the plane at 7:30 and exploring another island, and then take the 9 o'clock flight back to where you are, be back at 9:30, and the flights are like $100 round trip. It's like taking a bus. So I highly endorse. And the other thing I'll mention to our listeners is, while we always talk global, each state, each province, each, area of a different country, right, can have a totally different feel. And Hawaii is about as different as you can get. So I think it was a great pull by you there. And the island of which you speak is amazing. I think that's the island that, you're right, it's like 80 or 90% totally pristine. And last but not least, if you go to Hawaii, try their bananas, which taste actually really good. Some of their fruits that are really good, right, Chris? As opposed to the stuff that you often get at grocery stores that are designed for big consumption on that. So, Chris, well, we've got a chance here. Why don't you share with others where folks can find out more about yourself and RemoteBase? Because I'm sure people want to avail themselves of RemoteBase, and we'll make sure that these are in our liner notes for folks to get to.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, you can come and sign up to the newsletter. That's just at remotebase.co. Yeah, like I said, that's totally free. So it's just a little tap on the keyboard, little click of the mouse, and you're in. You're in. There's also, the free newsletter goes out once a month, and that's like a summary of all the good deals. But you can also join us as a premium member, and it's like $68 for the whole year, less than $6 a month. With that, what you get to do is kind of pick some preferences and say like, okay, here's my budget. this is my budget range. These are the continents that I'm interested in, and I'm into the city or I'm into the beach. And you can set those preferences, and we basically just fire out those deals to you whenever we find them. So they're kind of premium. There are premium alerts. And if you want to get me directly, personally, the best place to do that is probably over on LinkedIn. So, I'll give you guys the link there. But yeah, I'm always there. I'm always trying to get connected with people who are in this space and answer questions and stuff. Another way to get me personally is if you're signed up, just hit reply to any of the emails. They all come directly to me. And yeah, I'll be happy to kind of hear where you are, where you want to go, where you're going next. I love getting to chat with our members. I think it's really interesting.
Fabulous. Thank you, Chris. Alan, this has been good. I love hearing your bits on your time in Hawaii, most recently too, last month or so, and another good episode. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Alan, what do you think is your top takeaway today?
First off, I love the idea that somebody can help curate a discounted opportunity for me, and it will give me a ton of choices. And I really do think that a lot of times, until you see the different options, you forget about places. And I'm really excited. And then, Chris's commentary on some of the hotspots. I mean, Albania, Turkey, Brazil, India. I wrote them down, and just all marvelous places. And Albania was something that came to my attention there because it's a really unique place I like to get to. So, how about yourself, Andrew, as you take it away?
Okay, well, Hawaii has not been a state that I've been to, so my interest is piqued once more. It's one of those things I usually picture outside of my home country, even though it's for many, many years, it's not really been my home country. But yes, you've dangled the carrot once more. Hawaii should be on my list. Thanks everyone for joining us today. We are here for you and bringing you the best guest in this space. So if you will, write us a review, share this with others, and join us again next week because we'll have another fabulous guest for you to listen to. Thanks for joining.
Insured Nomads proudly supports the new Nomad podcast. Insured Nomads for the evolution of insurance, for the revolution of travel. For all your travel, medical, and support needs, please visit our website at insurednomads.com. We support our location-independent community worldwide.
Thanks for tuning in to the new Nomad podcast, where we bring together an incredible community of people and ideas that embody the nomadic spirit. Please remember to subscribe and leave a review. For more amazing tips to help you take advantage of the cross-border lifestyle, please visit us at insurednomads.com/podcast. See you next week.